Национально-освободительное движение Союза Советских Социалистических Республик.
The Soviet of Ministers of the USSR, State Committee on the State of Emergency, July 25, 2023. To all subjects, World Sovereign Legal Act of the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, God's mercy, right of the sovereign, by the right of the sovereign. The Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, represented by the State Committee for the State of Emergency in the USSR, as the supreme state authority of the USSR, expresses its respect and wishes for peace and creation to all great, united, sovereign Soviet people, all subjects of law and the entire world community. Confirms and proclaims, on February 12, 1990, in the Kremlin, under the chairman of Mikhail Gorbachev, a meeting of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR was held, whose members, having criminally violated the Constitution, basic law of the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, unanimously voted for the establishment of the democratic presidential power. As a result, in March 1990, at the extraordinary Third Congress of People's Deputies of the USSR, the anti-constitutional post of the President of the USSR was established. We hereby confirm that the decision of the Congress of People's Deputies of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, dated March 14, 1990, number 1361, and Article number 6 on the leading role of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, from the Constitution of the USSR by amending and supplementing the Constitution, basic law, of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was illegitimate and illegal. Since the Congress of the People's Deputies of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics first opened on May 25, 1999 year in the city of Moscow, and at that time was the supreme legislative body of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, but within the framework of the Constitution of the USSR dated October 7, 1977, without the right to make changes and additions to the Constitution of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics dated October 7, 1977. On December 24, 1990, at the Fourth Congress of People's Deputies of the USSR, it was decided to hold a referendum on the preservation of the USSR. On March 17, 1991, the majority of citizens of the USSR, forming the United, Multinational, Sovereign Soviet People, at the all-union referendum voted for the preservation of the USSR. Out of 185.6 million, 80% of citizens of the USSR with the right to vote, 148.5 million, 79.5%, took part in the referendum. Of this, 130.5 million, 76.43% answered yes spoke in favor of preserving the USSR, including RSFSR, 71.3%, Ukrainian SSR, 70.2%, Belarusian SSR, 82.7%. In the Middle Ages republics, average percentage of who voted for, over 90. The results of the referendum were fully recognized by the world community. In the period from August to December 1991, officials of the USSR, including the highest officials, committed criminal anti-people actions, in contradiction to all Union People's Referendum dated March 17, 1991. Officials, traitors, and betrayers of the motherland didn't take legal measures to preserve the Soviet people's state power of the USSR as the sovereign territorial integrity of the USSR. We remind you that not a single state body of the USSR, including the Supreme State Authority of the USSR, was authorized to make decisions of the liquidation of the USSR or the withdrawal of the republics from the sovereign country, the USSR, as well as other similar decisions. However, on September 6, 1991, the day after the end of the Fifth Extraordinary Congress of People's Deputies of the USSR, decrees of the State Council of the USSR, number GS1, GS2, and GS3 on the recognition of the independence of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia were signed by the false president of the USSR, Gorbachev MS. This was the beginning of the illegal dismemberment and actual fake collapse of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Soon, on the direct instructions of Gorbachev, diplomatic relations between USSR and the Baltic republics were established, which directly testify to the deliberate criminal nature of the actions of the illegitimate president of the USSR. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev announced the termination of his activities as a legitimate president of the USSR and signed the Decree number UP 3162 on the resignation of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Armed Forces and transferred control of strategic nuclear weapons, not authorized for it by the Constitution and laws of the USSR, to the identical illegitimate president of the RSFSR, Yeltsin. Before signing this decree and making an official address on Moscow television, Mikhail Gorbachev, in a telephone conversation, reported to U.S. President George Bush about his resignation of the duties of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, and transfer of powers of the use of nuclear weapons to the President of RSFSR, Yeltsin Boris Nikolaevich. On December 26, 1991, the session of the Upper House of the Supreme Council of the USSR, the Council of the Republics, adopted an illegitimate declaration number 142N on the cessation of the existence of the USSR. These acts by Mikhail Gorbachev are criminal on the basis of C1 AR 64 of the CC of the RSFSR, treason to the motherland, i.e., an act deliberately committed by a citizen of the USSR to the detriment of the sovereignty, territorial integrity of the USSR, a conspiracy to seize power. Part 2 of C1 170 of the CC of the RSFSR, abuse of power, i.e., international use of an official of his official position contrary to the interests of the service, if it's committed out of mercenary or other personal interests that cause serious consequences. Art 171 of the CC of the RSFSR, exceeding power, i.e., commissioned by an official of actions that clearly go beyond the limits of the rights and powers granted to him by law, if it causes significant harm to state or public interests. Thus, an organized criminal group of officials of the USSR and the highest officials of the USSR, including the legitimate president of the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev, in August-December 1991, deliberately, based on personal interest, committed acts that form the total set of these crimes directed against the foundations of the constitutional system and the state power of the USSR. These monstrous crimes, which had catastrophic consequences for the great, united Soviet people, led to the largest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, and therefore cannot have a statute of limitations. Violating the will of the great, united, sovereign Soviet people for preservation of the USSR, manifested at All-Union National Referendum on March 17, 1991, the rights of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR, and the generally recognized norms of international law, traitors, terrorists, and separatists who seized power as a result of the criminal activities of Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics of the USSR held an illegitimate period of sovereignties. Following the adoption of the legitimate declaration of the state sovereignty of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR, and the illegal secession of 6 republics from the USSR. March 11, 1990, Lithuanian SSR, May 4, 1990, Latvian SSR, May 8, 1990, Estonian SSR, April 9, 1991, Georgian SSR, August 27, 1991, Moldavian SSR, August 30, 1991, Armenian SSR. Traitors in the leadership of the republics of the sovereign country, the USSR, also adopted illegitimate declarations and signed illegal documents on secession from the USSR. In violation of the Constitution of the USSR of 1977, as the procedures for secession of the Union Republics for the USSR under the law of the USSR, dated on the 3rd of April 1990, number 1409 the 1st. In April 1991, at the residence of Mikhail Gorbachev in Nova Ogarevo between the Union Republics, RSFSR, Ukrainian SSR, Belarusian SSR, Azerbaijan SSR, Uzbek SSR, Kazakh SSR, Tajik SSR, Turkmen SSR, Kyrgyz SSR. A criminal process was initiated to form a new union treaty in the form of the Union Sovereign States, USS Federation. On December 8th, having once again committed a crime violating the Constitution of the USSR of 1977 and the procedures of withdrawing under the law of the USSR, dated the 3rd of April 1990, number 1401 the 1st, without having any legal authority for this from the great, united, sovereign Soviet people as a sovereign power in the USSR, and from the authorities of the USSR, as the Union Republics, as international subjects of the law of the sovereign country of the USSR, criminally violating the will of great, united, sovereign Soviet people, manifested and approved at the referendum on March 17, 1991, violating the right of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR, and the norms of international law, violating the Charter, principles, and goals of the United Nations. The heads of the RSFSR, the Ukrainian SSR, and the Belarusian SSR, and Belovezhskaya Puchina, without the approval of the great, unified sovereign Soviet people, as the leadership of the other Union Republics of the USSR, signed the Void-Belovezhskaya Agreement on the Creation of the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, thereby false presidents from the BSSR Shushkevich, from the RSFSR Yeltsin, and the Ukrainian SSR Kravchuk, committed actions containing signs of a serious crime under Art 61st of the Criminal Code of the BSSR, Art 64th of the Criminal Code of the RSFSR, Art 56 of the Criminal Code of the Ukrainian SSR, which consists in treason to the motherland by preparing and organizing conspiracy to unconstitutionally seize the state power of the Union Republics of the USSR, abolish the Union institutions of power that were then in force, unlawfully change the constitutional status of the BSSR, the RSFSR, and the Ukrainian SSR. According to the Constitution of the USSR of 1977, in the event of a discrepancy between the law of the Union Republic and the all-Union law, the basic law of the great sovereign country of the Union Soviet Socialist Republics shall apply, under the jurisdiction of the state of the USSR, represented by its highest bodies of the state power as the administration, according to the Article 73rd of the Constitution of the USSR of 1977, were subject to the determination of the state border of the USSR and approval of changes in the borders between the international subjects of law, the Union Republics, ensuring the unity of legislative regulations throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR, establishing the foundations of the legislation of the USSR as the Union Republics. This means that breaking of the Union Treaty is under the jurisdiction of the all-Union state authorities of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and its great, united, sovereign Soviet people, and not representatives of individual Union Republics. Thus, in 1991, foreign invaders in a criminal conspiracy with the national separatists, traitors to the great, united, sovereign Soviet people in the leadership of the republics of the USSR, carried out a criminal coup d'etat. As a result of the monstrous criminal actions of the foreign terrorists, traitors and betrayers of the motherland, the united great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was forcibly and criminally divided into 15 parts, and the great, united, multinational, sovereign Soviet people throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR was criminally captured and humiliated by terrorists and invaders with bloody violence and substitution of concepts, deceit and lies, and also forcibly driven into the occupation regime. On June 17, 1982, US President Ronald Reagan, in his criminal and deceitful speech at the UN General Assembly, called the USSR the empire of evil and the center of evil. Exactly 10 years later, on June 17, 1992, a traitor to his great motherland and fake president of the Russian Federation, Yeltsin Boris Nikolaevich, spoke in the American Congress, who announced his victory over the idol of communism and asked the Lord to bless America, betrayed our great motherland, thereby sworn in by the United States. Sovereignties of the international legal statute of each federal republic and autonomy of the USSR arise, exist and are regulated by the USSR Law No. 14/17 on the general principles of local self-government and local economy in the USSR, having in the USSR state registration number C1 9930-177, dated the 4th of April 1990, and C1 9930-199, dated on the 9th of April 1990, respectively. According to the law of the sovereign legislation of the USSR and international law recognizing the operation of the national legislation of the Union Republics during criminal, violent liquidation of the supreme authorities of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the Constitution of the USSR of 1977 as a procedure for the exit of the international subjects of law, the Union Republics under the law of the USSR, dated the 3rd of April 1990, number 1409 the 1st. At present, legally and in fact the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, exists and is an active subject of international law. All buildings, structures, property, assets located in the USSR and outside it legally continue to be in the possession of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Not a single centimeter of land, not a single building, structure, communications will legitimately transferred from the sovereign jurisdiction of the USSR to the jurisdiction of the newly formed private, commercial, separatist, predatory structures organized by criminal communities of the occupation regime of criminal transnational corporations. Also, banking assets, security, historical and cultural values, all other assets placed and located outside the sovereign territory of the USSR were not distributed. Great sovereign country, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and its great sovereign Soviet people retained its sovereign rights to all property of the USSR throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR and in the whole world. On December 29-30, 1991, the first Congress of Citizens of the USSR was held in the amount of 874 delegates, the RSFSR 368 delegates, the Ukrainian SSR 186 delegates, Belarusian SSR 94 delegates, Kazakh SSR 57 delegates, Armenian SSR 31 delegates, Moldavian SSR 30 delegates, Uzbek SSR 24 delegates, Tajik SSR 16 delegates, Kyrgyz SSR 14 delegates, Azerbaijan SSR 12 delegates, Latvian SSR 10 delegates, Georgian SSR 9 delegates, Lithuanian SSR 9 delegates, Turkmen SSR 8 delegates, Estonian SSR 6 delegates, 386 delegates Supreme Council USSR, 264 delegates Supreme Soviet Allied Republics, 149 delegates Regional, City and District Council, 57 delegates of Settlement and Rural Councils, 7 delegates from the power structures of the USSR. The First Congress of Citizens of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, expressing the will of the great sovereign Soviet people to preserve the USSR, expressed the referendum on March 17, 1991, given the difficult situation in the USSR as a violation of the Constitution of the USSR dated October 7, 1977. In Resolution No. 1, dated 30 December 1991, didn't recognize the signing of the Belovezhskaya Accords. By its decision in connection with the transfer of the productive forces of the RSFSR to new economic conditions, the First Congress of Citizens of the USSR transferred full power, legislative, executive and judicial, to the Military People's Council of the USSR, MPC of the USSR, represented by Comrade Dmitry Petrovich Verkhostupov, chairman and founder of the MPC of the USSR. The First Congress of Citizens of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in Decree No. 1, dated December 30, 1991, decided to entrust the chairman of the All-Union National Assembly of the USSR, D.P. Verkhostupov, and his deputy for the Presidium of All-Russian National Assembly of the USSR, the right to sign documents responsible for the execution and protection of the people of the USSR, and decided issue a mandate of confidence to the Military People's Council of the USSR on the basis of the cessation of the transfer of all power, legislative, executive, and judicial throughout the sovereign territory of the Soviet Union. Appoint the chairman of the Military People's Council of the USSR, People's Deputy, Major General, Comrade Dmitry Petrovich Verkhostupov as chairman of the State Security Committee of the Soviet Union, KGB of the USSR. The Military People's Council of the USSR, in accordance with the powers granted to this decree, assumes the functions of coordinating the activities of all people's patriotic organizations and movements with the aim of restoring the people's Soviet power throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR, to which it will provide all possible assistance and support. 873 delegates at the First Congress of Citizens of the USSR voted for this resolution. Mandate number 1, dated December 30, 1991, was issued to the Military People's Council of the USSR, which is a nationwide military organization serving the interests of the people and the motherland. And that Military People's Council of the USSR is full-fledged successor to the legislative, executive, and judicial powers throughout the sovereign territory of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev Mikhail Sergeyevich, Yeltsin Boris Nikolaevich, the leadership and government of the USSR, the RSFSR, and the national republics of the USSR, the embassies of foreign states and international community were immediately informed in writing about the results and decisions of the First Congress of Citizens of the USSR. On March 4, 1992, the MPC of the USSR was recognized by UNESCO. On March 17, 1992, the MPC of the USSR received recognition in the international community. On May 8, 1992, the MPC of the USSR was recognized by the UN. The First Congress of Citizens of the USSR on December 30, 1991, transferred the MPC of the USSR the right to operational management of the financial and foreign exchange reserves of the USSR, wherever they are, and also determined to all state administration bodies, KGB, law enforcement agencies, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the USSR Armed Forces, law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, justice, courts, financial structures to be transferred to the operational subordination of the Military People's Council of the USSR. On September 21, 1993, the Constitutional Court found Decree number 1400 inconsistent with the Constitution of the USSR, qualified the decision of the President of the Russian Federation, Yeltsin, dated September 21, 1993, as unconstitutional, which entails the coup d'etat, and by his decision, currently in force, dismissed Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin from the presidency. In violation of the decisions of the Constitutional Court, the Presidium of the Supreme Council and the 10th Extraordinary Ordered Congress of People's Deputies, a gangster-armed group controlled by the CIA, MI6, Mossad, and seized power in the RSFSR headed by Yeltsin Boris Nikolaevich. Mass murders and execution of Soviet citizens were committed in October 1993 in Ostankino and in the House of Soviets in Moscow, as well as an armed violent dispersal of the Congress of People's Deputies and the Supreme Council of the Russian Federation. Foreign corporatocrats and national traitors serving them, terrorists and separatists, were able to start an open mass robbery of the wealth of the great, united sovereign Soviet people and the great sovereign country of the USSR, the systematic destruction of the mechanism of socio-economic development, the destruction of the highest achievements of the Soviet system, and the sovereign Soviet people in all spheres of life, to the creation of instruments of violent and criminal control in all republics of the USSR, with the aim of transferring their economies to the periphery of the world market as its colonial raw material appendage. On October 15, 1993, bypassing the provision by the new constitution of the Russian Federation must be approved by national referendum, which, according to the Article number 9 of the current law of the referendum of the RSFSR, could only be appointed by the Congress of People's Deputies or Supreme Soviet of the RSFSR. The illegitimate president of RSFSR committed another criminal offense and arbitrarily signed the decree on the nationwide vote on the draft constitution of the Russian Federation. Decree of the President of the Russian Federation of October 15, 1993, number 1633, on holding a nationwide vote on draft constitution of the Russian Federation, and also legally approved the regulation on nationwide vote on the draft constitution Russian Federation on December 12, 1993. Signing the decree on a letterhead with the coat of arms of the RSFSR and being in the position of a legitimate president, Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin declared himself the president of the illegally non-existent Russian Federation, abused using a false official position, committed legal forgery, which is a criminal offense on the state scale, thereby violating the right of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR and the RSFSR, international law. The decree of the Central Election Commission of the Russian Federation, R142, is an evident fraudulent act. By decree of the legitimate President of the Russian Federation, the draft Constitution of the Russian Federation was put to vote. The Central Election Commission of the Russian Federation, summing up the draft Constitution of the Russian Federation, committed illegal forgery and crime, groundlessly indicated in paragraph 2 of the resolution that the Constitution of the Russian Federation was adopted. All illegitimate and incompetent declaration called the Constitution of the Russian Federation of 1993 consolidated the result of the gangster Yeltsin seizure of power at the behest of its foreign separatists, criminal masters as the basis of new occupation regime for the needs of the criminal terrorist conglomerate of corporatocracy, and was only the charter for the criminal private trading company Russian Federation, Russia. The Commonwealth of Independent States created on the sovereign territory of the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, according to their charter, is only an economic union. Its activities do not cover political and social issues. This is confirmed by the content of the Constitution of the Russian Federation, as well as the charter of the legal entity, as amended in 2020, is not the basic law in accordance with the statutory procedure, monitors the interaction of the subjects on the territory with the occupation regime. The Constitution of the USSR of 1978 is valid and is the basic law of the Republic, regulates political, social, and economic issues. Under the influence of criminal and deceitful propaganda of the mass media, various criminal structures, citizens received false information about the deprivation of the great, united, multinational sovereign Soviet people of the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, of the status of the sovereign citizen of the USSR. 4. False citizenship of criminal, separatist, predatory commercial corporations, Republic of Azerbaijan, Republic of Armenia, Republic of Belarus, Republic of Georgia, Republic of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Republic of Latvia, Republic of Lithuania, Republic of Moldova, Republic of Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Republic of Uzbekistan, Ukraine, Estonian Republic, and the illegal re-registration of civil legal status in Admiralty, maritime law. Thus, all sovereign citizens of the USSR were made incompetent vassals of the sovereign territory Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, by transferring control of all people's wealth to an organized, criminal, separatist, extremist community, which is controlled by the anti-human organization of the Illuminati, located mainly in the USA, Great Britain, Israel, Switzerland, and Germany. The demarcation lines of the state sovereign borders of the USSR have been agreed upon and are unchanged. All Soviet republics as international subjects of law are located only within the administrative boundaries of the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, without statehood. Pseudo-citizenship created by private criminal corporations of the sovereign territory of the Great Sovereign Country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, without confirmed rights to heirs could not arise. They could only be register of the population. Passports of the sovereign citizens of the USSR are valid. From the great, united, sovereign Soviet people, this information was carefully concealed. In accordance with the law of the USSR of May 23, 1990, number 1518 the first, on citizenship of the USSR, no one may be arbitrarily deprived of citizenship or the right to change citizenship. Every citizen of the Federal Republic is simultaneously a citizen of the USSR. Every citizen of an autonomous republic is simultaneously a citizen of the Federal Republic, which includes the autonomous republic and a citizen of the USSR. Citizenship of the USSR is acquired by birth as a result of admission of Soviet citizenship on the grounds provided for by international treaties of the USSR, on other grounds provided by this law. A child, both of whose parents were citizens of the USSR at the time of his birth, is a citizen of the USSR, regardless of whether he was born on the territory of the USSR or outside the USSR. A person who previously held Soviet citizenship may at his request be restored to citizenship of the USSR. Citizenship of the USSR is terminated due to withdrawal from the citizenship of the USSR, due to the loss of citizenship of the USSR, due to the deprivation of citizenship of the USSR, on the grounds provided by the international treaties of the USSR, on other grounds provided by this law. The termination of citizenship of the USSR entails the termination of the citizenship of the Federal Republic and the Autonomous Republic. Citizenship of the USSR is lost as a result of a person entering the military service, security service, police, justice authorities, or other bodies of state power and administration in a foreign state. If a person permanently residing abroad has not entered the consular register without good reason within 5 years, if the citizenship of the USSR was acquired as a result of the submission or deliberately false information or false documents, the loss of citizenship of the USSR occurs from the time of registration of this fact by the authorized state bodies specified in Articles 35 and 36 of this law. Deprivation of citizenship of the USSR may take place in exceptional case in relation to a person living abroad, if he has committed actions that cause significant damage to state interest or state security of the USSR. The deprivation of a person of citizenship of the USSR doesn't entail a change in the citizenship of his spouse and children. Thus, the sovereign citizens of the USSR and their children, who at the time of the seizure of People's Soviet power in the period from 1991 to 2003 were actual citizens of the USSR, to this day remain citizens of the USSR in the status of a sovereign citizen, with the exception of persons who violated the articles of the USSR law dated May 23, 1990, number 1518 the first, on citizenship of the USSR. Illegitimate, separatist, Russian Federation, Russia, in agreement with criminal, separatist, private, commercial companies, Republic of Azerbaijan, Republic of Armenia, Republic of Belarus, Republic of Georgia, Republic of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Latvian Republic, Republic of Lithuania, Republic of Moldova, Republic of Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, the Republic of Uzbekistan, Ukraine, the Republic of Estonia, December 25, 1991, without any legal grounds and rights, committing forgery, with the tacit consent of the United Nations, illegally declared itself at the international level the legal successor of the USSR. On the basis of Decree No. 4, dated June 13, 2023, the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the USSR, as a state military and political body of the Special Conference with expanded powers as a supreme state authority of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was declared to the Organization United Nations, the UN Secretary-General, the UN Security Council, the President of the UN Assembly on the criminal conspiracy of international criminal groups with the leadership of the UN, using the territorial location of the organization in the United States under the guise of CIA special forces, as a result of which criminal, commercial, private companies such as the fourth successor of the USSR, Russian Federation, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and other fake states. Thus, the sovereign citizens of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, were deceived and misled. The UN leadership carried out the act of criminal betrayal and began to leave the vector of fulfilling the statutory task of the UN and its peacekeeping mission to protect, preserve, strengthen peace, human rights, people, clans, tribes, all right humanity as a whole and free countries. On the basis of the gravest, monstrous, and anti-moral crimes committed against the one God, against humanity and nature, such as genocide, corruption, money laundering, organization and financing of military conflicts, wars and terrorism, crimes against free countries and human rights, crime in the field of natural tribe law, by the law of the sovereign, on the basis of the norms of international law, on the basis of the sovereign legislation of the USSR, by the right of the founder, general founder and absolute owner of the United Nations, and all its organizations and structural divisions, the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, represented by the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the USSR, Decree No. 4 dated June 13, 2023, decided to start the global reorganization of the United Nations and all its organizations and structural divisions, in order to decriminalize the UN and return the organization to the vector of action to fulfill the statutory tasks as well as the creation mission. Due to the involuntary absence of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in the work of the UN and all its organizations and structural divisions from 1991 to the present, all decisions, legal and by laws acts adopted in the United Nations, and all its organizations and structural subdivisions that contradict the laws and interests of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and its great, united, sovereign Soviet people, as well as those who contradict the norms of international law, adopted and approved before 1991, are considered to be illegitimate and have lost their legal force. We remind you that when signing the founding agreement of the United Nations regarding the contribution of the charter capital of the UN for its organization and development, absolutely all the money in the form of gold in the charter fund of the UN was contributed by the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in the amount of its initial charter capital of the UN 3,500 tons. And in total, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics transferred a little less than 20,000 tons of gold to the authorized capital of the United Nations. Countries such as the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, and France did not contribute their part of the authorized capital as the founders of the United Nations, but assumed obligations to repay their debt to contribute their shares to the authorized capital to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics for 50 years at very high rates. That is, the above-mentioned countries that had to fulfill their obligations to contribute their shares to the authorized capital of the founding agreement of the United Nations to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics before the 24th of October 1995. Since the establishment of the United Nations to the present day, the founding countries of the United Nations represented by the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, and France haven't yet fulfilled their obligations to contribute their shares in the statutory fund of the United Nations to the address of the Union's Soviet Socialist Republics. By the right of the sovereign, on the basis of the norms of international law, on the basis of the above fact of the failure to fill unconditional obligations by the countries, co-founders of the United Nations, the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, declared the legal fact of absolute possession as the founder-general of the entire United Nations and all its structural divisions. Starting from 2018, the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and its great sovereign Soviet people, by the right of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR and international law, in accordance with the UN Charter, is carrying out a large-scale restoration of the state structures and people-state bodies of the Soviet powers that suffered, were legally disbanded and bloodily captured between 1991 to 2023. On the basis of the decree of the Military People's Council of the USSR GPO of the USSR number PVK 33, dated on 23rd of March 2023, Order number 30 of the People's State Body of the Sovereign International Consumer Cooperative Light Great Russia, the State Committee for the State of Emergency was established on the basis of the decree of the Supreme National Assembly of the USSR number PVK 35, dated April 24, 2023. It was approved as the supreme authority of state power of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, under the laws of wartime, hereinafter referred to as the USSR State Emergency Committee, which announced this and sent notifications to the UN Secretary-General, the UN Secretary Council, the Chairman of the UN General Assembly, to the relevant UN committees. All international systemic legal and financial organizations, the chief regulator of the world financial system M1, the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem, Rhodes, Malta, the Supreme Sovereign Order of Hospitallers, Vatican City, and Buckingham Palace. All system organizations as a private trading company, Russian, Federation Russia. After reorganization and registration on April 12, 2023, in the Unified Register of State Register under the Treasury of the USSR as a State Cooperative Enterprise, Russian Federation Russia, all heads of private corporations, the Republic of Azerbaijan, the Republic of Armenia, the Republic of Belarus, the Republic of Georgia, the Republic of Kazakhstan, the Kyrgyz Republic, the Republic of Latvia, the Republic of Lithuania, the Republic of Moldova, the Republic of Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, the Republic of Uzbekistan, Ukraine, the Republic of Estonia, on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The attempt to collapse USSR in 1891 didn't solve the problem of the final conquest and robbery of the multinational Soviet people. Therefore, the criminal Harvard and Houston projects were developed. for the implementation of which a whole series of separatists, military conflicts and terrorist actions generously sponsored from the stolen assets of the USSR foreign special services was unleashed, weakening and splitting of the Union republics, which led to interesting conflicts, global genocide, and extermination of the great united multinational sovereign Soviet people on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. A targeted genocide is being carried out in relation to the Russian language as the state-forming unified language of communication of the great, sovereign Soviet people, the diverse multinational Russian culture and traditions. The criminal activities of terrorist, separatist corporations carrying out an anti-people, dictatorial occupation regime on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, organized and continue to carry out the plunder and global genocide of the sovereign Soviet citizens. It's impossible to describe all those monstrous crimes, that variety of genocide carried out by scum and criminals who have nothing holy, sacred and moral, without great sovereign Soviet people on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. With their corporate anti-people intellect in our sacred, sovereign house, they arranged the feudal system in neo-fascist and Zionist aggravated form, and today it has already turned into a ruthless tyranny. Their perverted criminal forms of genocide have touched all spheres of life of human, the great sovereign citizen of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. It's difficult to comprehend all torment, humiliation, abuse and crimes committed by the criminal, terrorist, separatist, anti-human occupation regime against children, adults, the older generation and Soviet families. International terrorists, in order to hide the severity of the scale of global crimes committed by them in the entire world, invented and introduced terms like collaborator, voluntary cooperation of citizens of an occupied state with an enemy aimed at harming the country of citizenship during a war or armed conflict, which is in the legislation many countries are equated with a war crime, with which they are trying to remove the degree of responsibility for the crimes committed. The great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, recalls and asserts that this term doesn't refer to the right of the sovereign, and therefore to the great, united, sovereign Soviet people. The degree of responsibility for global banditry and all its monstrous crimes that created the criminal, international, terrorist, extremist, separatist, anti-human community, together with the followers and accomplices, will bear absolutely full and fair responsibility without any linguistic distortion, in accordance with the legislation of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, criminal law of the USSR and norms of international criminal law. Criminal activities of legitimate corporations in the territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, has led to negative phenomena such as the massive export of capital, extremely low wages, the progressive curtailment of the system of social guarantees, the mass destruction of city-forming enterprises, destruction of scientific, industrial and intellectual potential against the background of the enrichment of the criminal privileged stratum, budget cuts in education, science, healthcare. There is a sharp increase in the mortality of people of working age, a sharp deterioration in the health of the population. From Russia and other republics of the USSR, the medical colonial raw material appendage of foreign countries, Russia has become a world leader in the export of oil and gas. Free higher and secondary technical education has been practically destroyed. The commercialization of education and its transformation into a service has led to a consistent decline in its quality, the formation of an elite education accessible only to the elite. All the so-called pseudo-states formed from the Union republics of the USSR, which arose as a result of an armed, bloody coup and the forcible capture of the USSR, and currently legitimate entities that serve the interest of the occupiers, their followers and accomplices. These illegal structures created by conclusion between organized, criminal, separatist groups whose legitimacy exists only in the deceived minds of people, but in reality are more or less hidden colonies of the criminal and aggressive forces of the United States of America and their criminal allies. All structural bodies, services, and even the governments of these pseudo-state formations, colonies, do not have sovereign state registration except for the state cooperative enterprise Russian Federation Russia, which is in the process of reorganization. All management bodies of private companies in the territories of the republics of the USSR are criminal legal entities that illegally declare themselves to be states, false states. The activities of the occupation administrations, of which are based on perverted and alien to the sovereign Soviet people, is highly cultural and highly social features. The sovereign Soviet people, throughout violence, deceit and lies, became a victim of historical crimes, illegally deprived of the primordial earth, its bowels and vital resources. The rights of the sovereign are indestructible, therefore the bloody crimes of the international criminal communities, including criminals, traitors, and traitors to the motherland, the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, didn't and cannot lead to the liquidation of the sovereign of the USSR. The State Committee for the State of Emergency of the USSR, as the state military and political body of the Special Conference with expanded powers, as the supreme authority of the state power of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, based on the decree of the MPC of the USSR GPO of the USSR number PVK 35, dated 24th of April 2023, by the right of the sovereign, on the basis of the norms of international law, proclaiming the inalienable rights of all the great, the one sovereign Soviet people, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is the internationally recognized legal acts, reaffirming the fundamental importance of the right to self-determination of the people and inviolability of the sovereign, by virtue of which they can freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Hereby decides, based on the current military political situation on the sovereign territory of the USSR, under the conditions of the emergency legislation and martial law in the USSR, all the Union republics in the USSR from the moment of signing the Sovereign Legal Act have the status of Soviet Socialist Republics under the jurisdiction of the Constitution of the USSR, Basic Law of 1977, and pass in the jurisdiction and powers of the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the USSR, for the transitional period and the exclusive effect of the emergency legislation of the USSR, the state laws of the USSR, and the laws of wartime. Approved belonging to the great sovereign Soviet people by the birthright of a human of the sovereign territory, the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in its indivisible, permanent sovereign borders determined following the results of the Second World War of 1945, as well as in accordance with the legislation of the USSR. Soviet citizenship retains legal force, which is unconditionally recognized by the world community and confirmed by all subjects of international law. Attempts to force a sovereign citizen of the USSR, wherever he lives, to renounce Soviet sovereign citizenship are a flagrant violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Sovereign Soviet citizens are absolutely free in terms of movement throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and in the entire world. It's absolutely intolerable and must be resolutely condemned by the world community. By the entire progressive world community, discrimination against the people on the basis of their belonging to the sovereign citizenship of the USSR. Sovereign citizens of the USSR reside on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, on legal grounds and cannot be discriminated against the infringed on the basis of their belonging to the sovereign Soviet citizenship, have the unconditional right to freely declare them belonging to the sovereign citizenship of the USSR, united sovereign citizenship of the USSR, and strive for reunification with other parts of the great, united, sovereign Soviet people, forcibly divided among themselves. Any opposition in relation to legal actions, including the legitimate demands of the sovereign citizens of the USSR, by any subject, is recognized as criminal and is determined by the degree of responsibility in accordance with the right of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR, the criminal civil codes of the USSR, and the RSFSR, in accordance with all its norms of international law. Corporations formed on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics as a result of a violation of the will of the sovereign Soviet people are declared illegal, contrary to the current constitution of the USSR, Basic Law of 1977. The restoration of people's Soviet power of the sovereign territory of the USSR is an internal affair of the great, united, sovereign Soviet people. Illegitimate separatist occupation regimes in the form of corporations throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, must be forced to self-liquidate. Persons appointed to the positions of presidents of private, separatist, occupying corporations, Republic of Azerbaijan, Republic of Armenia, Republic of Belarus, Republic of Georgia, Republic of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Republic of Latvia, Republic of Lithuania, Republic of Moldova, Republic of Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Republic of Uzbekistan, Ukraine, the Republic of Estonia, which illegally declare themselves states, false states, on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, as well as their officials, substitutes, and employees, performing the functions of state bodies of the USSR, are obliged to proceed with the reorganization and all internal subjects of the law of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in accordance with the sovereign legislation of the USSR and the requirements of the legitimate people's authorities. All organizations that perform the functions of state authorities that have not come under the leadership of the legitimate state authorities of the USSR become military and state criminals who bear criminal, public and personal responsibility in the military field tribunal of the USSR and under the laws of wartime provided for capital punishment. All private military companies located on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, including private military companies performing the functions of the ministers of defense, regardless of the jurisdiction of their registration, immediately stop criminal activities on the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Within 10 days, send your written notifications of readiness to conduct the reorganization of private military and paramilitary subjects to the state bodies of the USSR to email secretariat@gkchpussr.su. All law enforcement and law enforcement organizations in general, all judicial organizations throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, immediately reorganize in order to transfer from private, corporate entities, legal entities, to state bodies of the USSR in accordance with the legislation of the USSR, in compliance with the criminal and civil codes of the USSR and the RSFSR. Organizations performing the function of prosecutorial oversight in the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, immediately reorganize and completely switch to protection of legal rights and freedoms, the performance of supervisory state legal functions, in accordance with the legislation of the USSR, as state republican and regional prosecutors' offices, great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. To the entire sovereign civil society throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, as the supreme body of the people's sovereign power, to organize at the systemic level people's councils of all levels, village, city, district, regional, republican, with full observance of the law sovereign, legislation of the USSR and international law, to ensure complete security and absolute freedom of action within the framework of the sovereign legislation of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in terms of the formation of people's Soviet power throughout the sovereign territory of the USSR, on all plans in the organization and actions regarding the reorganization of the criminal, extremist, separatist, anti-people occupation regime, in accordance with the laws of the USSR, to all restored bodies of Soviet power, the People's Councils throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, reports the Secretariat of the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the USSR, as the state military, political body of the state power of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, by mail secretariat@gkchpussr.su. This decree has the status of an absolute sovereign legal legislative act, and is subject to full, mandatory execution throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and beyond, in the entire world, in accordance with the law of the sovereign, the legislation of the USSR, and the international rules of law. In the one that any subject of law and any subject ignores this decree of the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the USSR as the highest state authority of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the subject of law is recognized as criminal, belongs to the category of separatists and international terrorists. This decree shall enter into the force from the moment of its signing. Chairman of the State Emergency Committee of the USSR, Army General Boris Satushev, Commissar of the State Emergency Committee of the USSR, Lieutenant General Arseny Chernomorov, Secretaries of State Emergency Committee of the USSR, Major General Irina Горбачева.
Народно-освободительное движение Союза Советских Социалистических Республик.